Elliot Granger, an amateur astronomer, liked to spend his evenings on the roof of his countryside cottage, gazing at the stars through a second-hand telescope. He'd inherited both the telescope and the habit from his late father, a quiet man who used to say, "The sky is full of secrets, lad. Most of them don't want to be found." Elliot had never believed that. To him, the night sky was peaceful, a map of endless wonder. Until that night, the air was still, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat. The moon was bright, almost too bright, and the stars glimmered faintly through the haze. Elliot adjusted the telescope, angling it toward the Sea of Tranquility. But something shimmered at the edge of his vision, a flicker of light in the wrong place. He blinked, turned the lens slightly, and froze. There was another moon, smaller, fainter, like a reflection. It hung beside the real one, perfectly round, pale, and still. At first, he thought it was an optical illusion, maybe a lens flare or a trick of his tired eyes. But as he watched, the second moon pulsed softly, as though breathing. Elliot rubbed his eyes, checked his phone camera, and pointed it upward. The phone captured only one moon. But when he looked through the telescope again, both were still there, and the second one had moved closer. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound caught in his throat. He lowered the telescope and stared with his naked eyes. The sky looked normal. Still, something about the real moon seemed wrong now. It felt aware of him, as if its pale surface was focusing on his tiny presence below. That night he couldn't sleep. He left the curtains open, just in case he'd imagined it all. But around 3 a.m, when the wind died and the world went silent, he woke to find his room filled with silver light. The second moon hung outside his window, far too close, far too real. It wasn't a celestial body anymore. It looked like an enormous eye, a lidless, colorless orb, its surface glistening like wet glass. The light pouring through his window pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat, slow, deliberate. Elliot stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. His telescope crashed to the floor. When he looked again, the second moon was gone. Only the real one remained, calm and innocent. Over the next few days, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Even in daylight, when he stepped outside to fetch the post, he felt a prickle between his shoulder blades, like something vast and unseen was observing him from above. At night, he avoided the sky. But every reflective surface, windows, puddles, the kettle, caught flashes of that impossible orb hovering where it shouldn't be. He stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. His friends thought he was losing it. Then the power went out. Every light in the cottage flickered, died, and the world outside turned silver again. He peeked through the curtains. The second moon was back. But this time, it wasn't in the sky. It hung low, just above the tree-line, immense and trembling, its pale light flooding the fields like liquid mercury. Elliot's skin crawled. He could feel it seeing him. He backed away from the window, his chest tight, the house around him humming softly, as though the air itself was vibrating. And then came the whisper, "Found you." It wasn't loud, but it echoed everywhere, in the walls, the floorboards, inside his skull. He clamped his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. "You looked first." The room tilted, his vision blurred. The light outside began to pulse faster, strobing violently. Through the window, the second moon split open, not cracked, opened, like a lidless eye revealing its pupil. And within that pupil, shapes writhed, silhouettes of things vast and boneless, stretching and coiling across the horizon. Elliot stumbled toward the door, but the handle burned his hand. The metal was hot, almost melting. The whisper came again, nearer this time. "We were content to watch. You stared too long." He screamed, throwing himself through the kitchen window. Glass shattered. He landed in the damp grass, gasping. Above him, the second moon stared down, filling half the sky now, a colossal, pulsating eye. Its light began to move, crawling across the ground like tendrils. Where it touched the earth, the grass turned gray, then melted into a slick, shifting sludge. Elliot ran. He sprinted through the field, his feet sinking into the damp soil. Every step was harder than the last. He reached the forest and plunged into the trees. The silver light followed, cutting through the canopy. The whisper grew louder, now layered with others, hundreds, thousands of voices, all speaking the same phrase in unison. You saw. You saw. You saw. Elliot covered his eyes, but even in the darkness behind his eyelids, he could still see it. That endless gaze burned into his mind like an afterimage. He fell to his knees, clutching his head, sobbing, and then silence. The light faded. The whispers stopped. He opened his eyes. The forest was dark again. Only the real moon shone overhead, calm and distant. He lay there for what felt like hours before crawling back home. Days passed. He tried to convince himself it was a breakdown, a trick of exhaustion. But every mirror, every puddle, every faint reflection now showed something wrong. In each one, behind his reflection, hung the faint outline of the second moon, smaller, dimmer, but always there. Watching, he covered every reflective surface in the house, but it didn't help. He could still feel its stare when he closed his eyes. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He began writing in his father's old astronomy journal, the one filled with constellations and careful notes. His entries became frantic scrawls. It's closer. It follows the gaze. When I look away, it moves. The last entry simply read, "It's behind the real one now." A week later, the villagers found Elliot's house empty. The doors were locked from the inside. The walls were covered with drawings, circles upon circles, eyes within eyes. His telescope stood upright on the roof, pointing directly at the moon. Through it, the police found no second orb, just the familiar craters and shadows. But when one officer, out of idle curiosity, peered into the telescope a second time, his face went pale. He whispered, "There's something behind it." He never explained what he saw. He left the forest the next day and moved away. Months later, on a still night, a new light appeared beside the moon. Astronomers called it a lunar anomaly, a transit reflection, perhaps debris orbiting nearby. But when telescopes turned toward it, the data was inconsistent. Some saw nothing. Others reported what looked like an eye. Just one, vast and pale, reflecting light that wasn't from the sun. And somewhere in an empty cottage at the edge of Brindlewick, a single page in a weathered notebook reads, "The second moon isn't watching the world. It's watching those who saw it first."